Blamed for my sister's disappearance, abandoned by my fiancé, and facing the end with a secret illness. Chapter 1, The Silent Night. Elena Miller is exhausted from the endless wedding planning, work demands, and family obligations. Her phone is always buzzing, so on this particular night, she decides to put it on silent for the first time in months. It's a small rebellion, a simple act to claim peace, but it will prove to be the decision that shatters her life. Unbeknownst to her, a call comes in during the night from her younger sister, Nora, who is abroad on a backpacking trip. Elena wakes up refreshed, only to find a voicemail left by a stranger saying Nora is missing. Guilt begins to sink in as she wonders if she could have prevented this. Later that day, the full weight of her family's reaction hits her. Her father barely speaks, but the look of accusation in his eyes says it all. Her brother Adam, always the protective one, is openly furious, and Lucas, her fiancé, holds her responsible. She can see the fury in his eyes as he questions why she didn't answer her phone. In a moment of anguish, he even goes so far as to say that Nora might be dead because of her negligence. The words sting, but the guilt Elena feels is even sharper. She decides to do whatever it takes to find her sister, no matter the cost. Her family may see her as responsible, but she's determined to make it right. That night, with a bag hastily packed and a heart heavy with remorse, she books a one-way ticket to Europe to begin her search. The journey to find Nora begins, and Elena knows it may be her only chance at redemption. Chapter 2, Confronting the Past. Elena's arrival in Europe is filled with disorientation and desperation. As she navigates unfamiliar streets and struggles to understand fragments of local languages, her mind spins with regret. She replays every memory of Nora in her head, searching for clues that might explain what led her sister to reach out that fateful night. The messages on Nora's social media accounts are her first lead, revealing photos of new friends and landmarks that she'd never mentioned to Elena. Elena meets with the last person known to have seen Nora, a hostel owner named Marco who recalls a girl fitting Nora's description. Marco is evasive, and his language barrier doesn't help. However, he recalls Nora speaking of someone she had met, a local man named Louis who supposedly introduced her to the darker side of town. Elena's worry intensifies as she wonders if Nora got herself entangled with dangerous people, but Marco claims he knows nothing more. Back at her hotel, Elena calls home to reassure her family that she's following leads. Her father answers, his voice cold and distant. "Bring her back," he says flatly, as if it's a demand, not a request. She tries to explain the complexity of the search, but he dismisses her, asking if she's just wasting more time. The pain in his voice hits her hard, reinforcing her feeling of being the family scapegoat. That night, she vows to bring Nora back, no matter how long it takes. Chapter 3, Buried Secrets. Elena decides to meet Louis, the mysterious man mentioned by Marco. She tracks him down in a dimly lit cafe, and their conversation is cryptic. Louis admits to spending time with Nora, but he insists he's not responsible for her disappearance. He speaks of Nora's curiosity about the underbelly of the city and reveals that she often talked about escaping her life back home, hinting at unresolved issues with her family. This revelation shakes Elena to her core. She always thought Nora was carefree and happy, yet here is a man suggesting that Nora felt trapped. In her heart, Elena wonders if her sister might have wanted to disappear intentionally. As she listens, she senses Louis is hiding something but has no way of proving it. He parts with a warning to let sleeping dogs lie and advises her to leave before she gets too entangled. Confused and frightened, Elena returns to her hotel room, where she begins to feel physically unwell. A routine doctor's visit a few weeks earlier had revealed worrying symptoms, but she pushed it aside. Now, the stress of Nora's disappearance is intensifying her symptoms. Unwilling to worry her family further, Elena decides to keep her illness hidden. This journey to find Nora has taken on a whole new urgency, as her own life may be running out. Chapter 4, The Unbreakable Bond. Determined to keep going, Elena begins meeting people from Nora's social media network, each person revealing a different side of her sister. To Elena's surprise, Nora had developed a reputation in the city, leaving an impression of a fearless traveler with a sense of adventure. She feels a growing resentment toward herself for not truly understanding her sister's need for freedom. The tension between them had always simmered, but she never realized how deeply it ran. In a bar that Nora frequented, Elena finds an old photograph of them taken years ago, hidden in one of Nora's favorite books left behind. Seeing it breaks Elena's heart. She feels an overwhelming sense of loss, as if she's mourning a part of herself as well. She realizes that for so long, she had seen herself as the responsible one, always doing the right thing, while perhaps pushing Nora away without even realizing it. As she leaves the bar, she's overcome by fatigue and nausea, a reminder of her own frailty. But she pushes through, knowing she must honor her sister's memory and find out what really happened. She checks her phone, still no supportive messages from Lucas or her family, only questions about progress, and thinly veiled accusations. Chapter 5, Shadows of Betrayal. Days later, Elena meets a detective named Matthias who's been investigating missing tourists. He's interested in Nora's case but hints at something unsettling, that Nora may not be the innocent victim Elena assumes. According to Matthias, Nora might have willingly joined a dangerous group linked to drug trafficking and had a reputation for reckless decisions. Elena is defensive, unwilling to believe that her sister would fall into such darkness. But as Matthias presents more evidence, including emails between Nora and known criminals, Elena is forced to confront the possibility that Nora had secrets. For the first time, Elena begins to doubt her sister's character. She realizes that perhaps she has been searching not just for Nora, but for the idealized version of her, a person who may never have existed. Feeling emotionally drained, Elena reaches out to Lucas for support. But their conversation turns into an argument when Lucas accuses her of wasting time and resources chasing a sister who likely got what was coming to her. The harshness in his words leaves Elena feeling completely isolated. She realizes she's in this search alone, with no one to lean on as she continues to unravel the mystery of Nora's disappearance. Chapter 6, Facing the Illness. With her symptoms worsening, Elena reluctantly visits a clinic. The doctor confirms her fears, her illness has progressed significantly. He suggests immediate treatment, but she declines, focusing instead on her search for Nora. The doctor is perplexed by her choice, urging her to reconsider, but Elena knows she must finish what she started. Elena's resolve hardens, but she feels the toll on her body. She starts to reflect on her own life, recognizing the sacrifices she's made for others, always putting family and responsibility above her own happiness. She realizes that this mission to find Nora has become as much about finding herself as it is about uncovering what happened to her sister. For the first time, she decides to keep a journal of her journey, noting her fears, regrets, and memories of Nora. This act of writing becomes cathartic, helping her see her life with a newfound clarity. But time is against her, and as her health declines, she knows she has limited days left to find the answers she seeks. Chapter 7, The Revelation of Letters. Elena stumbles upon a hidden stash of letters in an old journal that Nora left behind at one of her favorite cafes. These letters are addressed to her family, each one filled with confessions and secrets Nora never had the courage to reveal in person. In her letter to Elena, Nora speaks of feeling overshadowed by her responsible, perfect older sister, someone she both admired and resented. Nora's words are raw and painful, painting a picture of a girl torn between love for her family and a need for independence. Elena feels as if a veil has lifted. She'd always believed she knew her sister, but now she realizes Nora was a stranger in many ways. Her own guilt is intensified by the realization that, in her dedication to her family's expectations, she may have unknowingly contributed to Nora's feelings of isolation. For the first time, she lets herself grieve, allowing tears to flow freely as she reads and rereads Nora's final words. As she sits alone in the empty cafe, the reality of her own loneliness sinks in. Her family has all but abandoned her emotionally, and her fiancé's support has turned cold and accusatory. These revelations are difficult to face, but they fuel her resolve. Determined to make amends in any way she can, she decides to reach out to her family once more, hoping to bridge the painful gap Nora's disappearance has created. Back at her hotel, she writes letters of her own, letters she may never have the chance to send. In them, she pours out her regrets, her apologies, and her wishes for her family to heal. She realizes that her journey to find Nora has become as much about seeking forgiveness for herself as it is about locating her sister. Chapter 8, A Fractured Bond. Elena's efforts to reconnect with her family meet with mixed results. Her father refuses to talk to her, seeing her search as a waste of time. Her brother Adam, however, surprises her with a hesitant response, agreeing to meet her on neutral ground. As they sit across from each other, Adam's bitterness is evident, but there's a softening in his eyes she hasn't seen before. He admits that he misses Nora and is terrified of losing Elena too, though he struggles to articulate his feelings without anger. During their conversation, Adam reveals his own feelings of guilt. He was the one who encouraged Nora to go on her solo trip, despite knowing about her impulsive nature and risk-taking behavior. Elena realizes that he, too, is haunted by his own mistakes, but unlike her, he has found it easier to project his pain onto her. In this shared moment of vulnerability, they both begin to mend their fractured relationship, finding solace in each other's shared grief. Adam finally asks about her health, noting how tired and frail she looks. Elena brushes off his concern, but he presses, sensing that she's hiding something important. Torn between telling the truth and protecting her family from more pain, she opts to keep her diagnosis to herself, wanting her final days to focus on Nora and on mending family bonds. Their encounter ends with a tentative understanding, a fragile thread of connection that wasn't there before. As Adam departs, he leaves Elena with a promise to support her, and for the first time, she feels a glimmer of hope that maybe her family can heal even if she may not be there to see it. Chapter 9, Lucas's Betrayal. Back at her hotel, Elena finds a message from Lucas, asking her to return home. Desperate for support and longing for a familiar presence, she decides to meet him in a neighboring city, hoping to find the comfort and understanding that has been missing for so long. When they meet, however, Lucas is distant and cold. He reveals that he's considering ending their engagement, unable to forgive her for what he sees as her role in Nora's disappearance. Lucas's words cut deeply, and Elena realizes that the man she thought would stand by her has been harboring doubts for a long time. He accuses her of choosing her family over him, of being obsessed with guilt instead of focusing on their future. The betrayal is shattering, and in that moment, Elena sees that Lucas, like her father, is unwilling to understand the depth of her pain and determination. Despite the hurt, Elena maintains her composure, feeling a surprising calm settle over her. She calmly tells Lucas about her cancer, laying bare her vulnerability in one final attempt to make him understand. But instead of the compassion she hoped for, Lucas reacts with discomfort, unwilling to shoulder the burden of her illness. He leaves, stating that he needs time to think, leaving her feeling abandoned and heartbroken. Alone once again, Elena realizes that she's been clinging to a fantasy of support and love that never truly existed. The loss is painful, but it liberates her as well. She resolves to focus on herself and her mission, accepting that she may have to face this journey alone until the end. Chapter 10, A Hidden Life. Continuing her search, Elena follows a new lead to a remote village, where a woman named Marisol claims to know Nora. Marisol is reluctant to speak at first, but after seeing Elena's determination, she relents, revealing that Nora had stayed with her for several weeks. According to Marisol, Nora had been deeply troubled and spoke of escaping her life back home, feeling misunderstood and trapped by expectations she could never fulfill. Elena feels both anger and sadness as she learns more about her sister's hidden struggles. She recalls how Nora had always seemed carefree, but Marisol's account reveals a girl haunted by family pressures and a desire to break free. Nora's stories to Marisol paint a picture of a life filled with contradictions, a girl who craved freedom yet longed for family approval, who loved deeply but feared commitment. Marisol hands Elena a small trinket Nora left behind, a necklace their mother had given her years ago. The weight of the keepsake fills Elena with a deep sorrow, reminding her of the bond they shared despite their differences. She realizes that Nora may never have intended to return, choosing a life of anonymity over the pain of confronting her family's expectations. As she prepares to leave the village, Elena is struck by the irony of it all. She came looking for her sister, only to discover that Nora's disappearance may have been an escape of her own making. She wonders if she should continue searching or if it's time to let go, but something within her urges her to keep going, to find closure not just for her family but for herself. Chapter 11, A Final Message. Exhausted and weakened by her illness, Elena finds herself in a quiet moment of reflection. She decides to return to the cafe where she first found Nora's letters, hoping for one last piece of her sister to guide her. To her surprise, she finds a letter addressed to her, one she'd somehow missed. It's from Nora, a heartfelt message written months before her disappearance. In the letter, Nora apologizes for the pain she may have caused and explains her decision to leave. She speaks of her love for Elena, expressing regret for the tension between them, and reveals that she'd always felt overshadowed by her sister's strength and resilience. "You were always the one holding us together," she writes. "But I needed to find my own way, my own path." The letter is both a confession and a goodbye, a final act of honesty that both pains and heals Elena. She feels a mix of anger and understanding, realizing that Nora's decision to disappear was not about hurting the family but finding herself. In a way, Nora's journey mirrored her own, an attempt to break free of the weight they each carried. Overwhelmed, Elena clutches the letter to her chest, feeling as though she has finally found the closure she's been seeking. She knows now that Nora's journey was never about her, and that her role is to forgive and let go. For the first time, she feels at peace, accepting that some answers can only be found within. Chapter 12, Letting Go. Returning home, Elena confronts her family with a newfound sense of calm and clarity. She shares Nora's letter, allowing them to understand her sister's decision. Her father's hardened expression softens as he reads Nora's words, and Adam, too, sheds tears of regret. The shared sorrow brings them closer, healing the rift that Nora's disappearance had left behind. In a private moment, Elena finally reveals her illness to her family, giving them the chance to reconcile before it's too late. Adam holds her tightly, promising to honor her memory and ensure that Nora's story is never forgotten. Her father, too, is overcome with regret and vows to cherish the family he still has. In the weeks that follow, Elena's health declines, but she finds peace surrounded by her family's newfound love and understanding. Lucas reaches out, asking for forgiveness, but Elena, now wise with the knowledge of her own worth, gently declines, choosing to surround herself only with those who truly understand her journey. As she takes her final breaths, Elena reflects on the journey she has taken, both within herself and across the world. She knows she has honored her sister's memory, found peace within her own heart, and, at last, forgiven herself. Her journey ends, but her story lives on, a testament to the resilience of family bonds and the power of self-discovery.